Hello, welcome to episode 193 of the Epic Film Challenge 2, 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, 1986's Henry, the Portrait of a Serial Killer, although it was released, I think, widely in 1990. A lot of these films in the book, they have these kind of release dates, you know, or the date of production, and then they don't get released until years later. In the case of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, the film was made, and they just didn't feel like releasing it. They even thought, why even chuck it on a VHS? So it kind of was made and finished, but for years it kind of languished, and you know, word would get out and so on and so forth, and eventually it saw the light of day, made a bit of money in the cinema, and then made a lot more on home video. The film is loosely based on the real serial killer Henry Lee Lucas, who I think had 11 confirmed murders, or convicted murders I should say. But he claimed to have over 600, and so this was a guy who basically took credit for a lot of murders he didn't do, and they kind of looked into it and found out there was no way he could have done them. So an intriguing character, and played and brought to life by Michael Rooker, who a lot of people will know from The Walking Dead as Merle, or in Guardians of the Galaxy films as Yondu, and he's really, really good in the film as Henry. I almost wish that the film was better to kind of support his performance. I did like the film. I thought it was well made. I thought there were some interesting choices. The opening scene of the film sees him driving around in his car with like upbeat music playing on the radio, and then it'll smash cut to one of the victims that he's murdered, and you'll kind of hear the echo of the murder taking place as we see the dead bodies. Although those long shots that linger, sometimes you'll see kind of the neck kind of moving because the the person who's playing the dead body still needs to breathe. So maybe some of those long shots are a bit ill-advised, because I was brought out of it by looking at, oh, that woman's clearly breathing even though she's supposed to be dead. But I like that concept, you know. It takes that idea of murdering people and kind of juxtaposes it with something very normal, like driving down the road and listening to the radio. So I thought this was going to be a really interesting look into the mind of a serial killer, as the film title would suggest, Portrait of a Serial Killer. So Henry is living with a guy called Otis, who brings his sister Becky into the apartment because she's been dealing with some problems with her husband or her partner. She has a young daughter who's living with her mother, and she's come to stay with her brother Otis, who's a bit of a creep, and she's had a bit of a rough go of things. And she becomes enamored with Henry, even when she finds out from Otis that they met in prison, and that Henry, when he was a young teenager, murdered his mother. Now, you'd think that any girl would come into an apartment with her brother and find out that the man that they're living with murdered his mother. You'd think this would raise all kind of alarm bells and that she would be out of there. But she wants to know more about it, and she quizzes him on it, and she kind of lets her guard down very quickly for Henry and says that, you know, when I was a young girl, my father abused me, you know, and she kind of ekes it out of him, and they get talking, and they form a bit of a bond, though I feel like it's much more from her side than his. And I think that Michael Rooker did such a great job of appearing so apathetic, appearing so emotionless at times. You know, there's just such a deadness to the way he portrayed this character. And it's one of those things where apparently he was in character 24/7 on the set, which, you know, if that works for you, that works for you. But in my mind, I always think that, you know, if you're a good actor, you should be able to just kind of, you know, ease into it and not have to kind of live the role for like a month or whatever. But that's what he did to get into character, and the results show, they really do. And I think that he stands out more than the rest of the film. The film's very disturbing, some of the murders, and there's a particular sequence that was just so hard to watch, because they get a video camera and they decide to go and murder this family in their home, just like a typical, you know, wife, husband, and young teenage boy, and they film it. And you watch them film it, and it's a really weird scene. I didn't even realize how we were watching it, because it starts out, you're just looking at a TV screen and the recorded footage from the camcorder, and I just felt like I was there in the moment until I realized, whoa, wait, we're watching this on the TV, so who's watching the tape? And after the scene is finished, we cut to Otis and Henry. They're just sat there watching what they've done. They're watching their murder. And so it's very disturbing, but I thought that the choice of doing it that way made it even more kind of raw and immediate, and just horrifying, you know. But that scene was just horrible to watch. And the thing I really didn't like about the film was how it tries to go down that black comedy route, you know, and there's some kind of like gags between Henry and Otis and little jokes and things, and it's just like, nope. You know, once I saw that kind of family murder scene, there's nothing funny about this film in the slightest, and I just didn't feel like that worked at all. And people were really mad when this film came out. Apparently someone went up to the director and said, "You can't do that." And he's like, "What?" And he says, "You've just made a film where there's a serial killer who murders people and he gets away scot-free at the end. You can't do that." And the director said, "Well, we just did do that." And I admire that it shows you that kind of that harsh reality, that sometimes these guys get away with it. Of course, Henry Lucas, the real man, did get sentenced to death. It was then later changed to life in prison. He died in 2001 for heart failure, I think. But in the film, we don't follow him getting caught or anything like that. We just see this series of murders and just how it becomes just like any other thing for him, just a normal process of life, killing people for seemingly no reason. And there's something incredibly chilling about that, knowing that there are people like that out there. And I don't know, at times the film just gets to a point where you're seeing these characters killing other people for no reason, and it's just so throwaway, I guess that's the point, again, to see these people who kill for, just the act of doing it, but there's just nothing in it to me. In those scenes where just taking someone's life is just so throwaway, again, to use the same word. I don't know, it's I just don't know what to think in a lot of ways. But to me, I look at a film like The Vanishing, and I find that to be a much more interesting and captivating look into the mind of a serial killer. And I think maybe the fact that it's also a fictitious story makes me be able to enjoy it a bit more, knowing that we're dealing with a real serial killer and real horrible, horrific events. I mean, we hear why Henry is the way he is, because his mother would bring people over and sleep with them and get Henry to watch them, and she would dress Henry up in women's clothing and things like that. And just me talking about it now, I feel uncomfortable because that happened to someone, and the actual guy, I mean, he's been dead for over 15 years now, but it makes you feel uncomfortable just talking about this real thing that happened. That's just me. It's not a bad film, but it's a really uncomfortable film. And just like the apartment they stay in, it's just so grimy and just dirty. It just made my skin crawl, I suppose that's the point. And yeah, the performance by Michael Rooker was really, really strong, but the film itself, there's not much to enjoy. It's a very lifeless movie. There's a bit of hope in Becky's character, but I mean that quickly gets quashed really towards the end of the film, and it just there's just not really many redeeming qualities to it. And I'm all for films following a different path and telling different stories and not being happy and upbeat and having a kind of nice ending or anything, but it just wasn't very enjoyable to me. It was made pretty well, but even that, I don't think it was that well made. Just yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about it. Is it a film you should see before you die? I don't think so. I don't see what you would get out of it. I don't feel regretful that I've watched it, I don't think I ever would watch it again, possibly, I don't know, but it really didn't entertain me. And I know that it's not meant to entertain, but it just, I didn't get anything out of it. I didn't even feel like I learned anything from it. And again, I'm not saying you have to learn stuff from films, but to me, I just don't see the merit coming out of it, There's no entertainment. There's not much to learn. It's gruesome. It's horrifying. If you want to watch it for a film to scare you, that's one thing, I suppose. But then that just makes me uncomfortable thinking about the real events. Although apparently the murders in this film were all based on the ones that he kind of either fabricated or said that he did, and it wasn't him. So there's that at least. But yeah, just mixed feelings on this one. I'd still rate it fairly decently. Maybe like a 3 out of 5. If we're gonna break it down into how I felt about it as a film. Like, I certainly still give it merit and so on. I didn't hate it by any means. I didn't even really dislike it. It just wasn't one that I liked. I'm right in the middle with it. I really am. The only thing that makes it really worthwhile for me is Michael Rooker's performance, which I thought was very, very good. So there we go. Leave me your thoughts on the film down below, what you think about it. If you disagree, awesome, let me know why. If you agree, expand upon that. I'd love to hear some thoughts on it, as always. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.